Welcome to the Intimacy Inquiry, where we dive deep into the journeys, struggles, and triumphs of extraordinary women. Today, I'm honoured to host Nedjma Belaid, founder of With Kind Awareness. Nedjma is far more than an empowerment coach. She's a mentor, a healer, and a guide who's helped literally hundreds of women step into their truest, most authentic selves. Drawing on her fascinating experience as a pharmacist, a master of multiple coaching modalities, and someone who has walked her own courageous path from people-pleasing to deep self-love. Nedjma brings wisdom, compassion, and real-life transformation to every conversation. Today, we'll explore her story, what it means to live authentically, and the power of finding true belonging from the inside out. Gosh, there's a lot there. I'm going to have to dive straight in. First of all, thank you so much for joining today. It's very kind of you to give us a bit of your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Andrew.
The first thing I have to ask, and I always start with this, is just to take you back a little to explore what your formative years were like. So would the 14-year-old you recognize who you are today?
Good question. Probably, I think in some ways she
Mhm.
would be very curious about what my life would have been and just would want to ask plenty of questions to know the future. I think at that age I was very much in the dreaming and how can the future be and what could I create. And I think I've always been very open to anything happening. Um, but yeah, I think she would be very curious about my path and very interested to start in living that herself.
And what were your ambitions when you left school, went on to college, progressed? I know you became a pharmacist. So what were
Yeah.
your ambitions? What did they feel like at the time?
Well, I actually started with a degree in pure and applied mathematics. So I
Oh my
had a
goodness.
bachelor, yeah, I completed my bachelor, started a master's degree, and just realized that it was getting way too abstract for me. And ultimately, doing math research, you're just all by yourself in an office with books. And as much as I love textbooks, it was getting a bit lonely. Like I was looking forward to lunch to just speak to someone. So I realized this was not going to be a path for me. So I went to speak to the school person who just helps you to find your path. And I'm like, give me all the tests. Like, I want to know what I'm meant to be doing. And at that point, I really wanted to find a profession
Mhm.
because when you have a degree in pure and applied math, it's not like there's not a clear job for you. You could work in so many different things. And I just felt like this overwhelming options was too much for me. So I wanted a clear path and I knew I wanted to work with people and I loved science. And so the healthcare sciences was the perfect fit. And so I applied in different degrees, got accepted in pharmacy school. And my mom was a pharmacist too, so I kind of knew a little bit about it. My dad's an engineer, so I guess I followed the engineer path a little bit first and then the other path. And so really I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that you should go to school and have a good job so you can make money and start your family.
Mhm.
And at that point, I think my parents were divorced. I was a massive people pleaser. I was just navigating my emotions, my relationships, and really looking to start creating my life so I can kind of be independent and move away from that and kind of find myself.
Mhm.
Mhm.
How did your um, people pleasing manifest itself? Was it that you were in less than optimum relationships? Was it professional side of things, personal side of things? How did the people pleasing, come to the fore?
It was mostly, I would say, on in relationships, which is pretty much everywhere. So
Yeah.
initially, well, my mom and dad are from two different religions and cultural background as well.
Hmm.
And so when I grew up, I felt pressure to be of my dad's religion, which I had no clue which way I wanted to go, but I just felt like, okay, I have to be that. And even as I grew up and I felt like it wasn't necessarily my beliefs or something that was aligning with me, I kept being a massive chameleon and just pretend everywhere I was. So, how it translated for me was a lot of anxiety because wherever I was around people,
Mm.
I would just always assess. So, I was having this massive armor and shield, so to speak,
Hmm.
that I couldn't let down until I felt it was okay and the person actually liked me, and which didn't happen all that often because I needed to be sure. And like reading the room, reading people's facial expressions, the nonverbal, I was very astute and always at the mercy of what I felt people wanted me to be, wanted me to behave like. And so that's what happened for me, and it felt very draining. And so I would have these moments of, okay, being with people because I don't want to be alone and lonely, and
Mm.
just trying to fit in and read the room and being a little stiff like that. And then going more like, okay, I need to just be myself. This is a lot of work. So I'm just going to like go in my hermit cave. And so I would bounce around. And once in a while, I would feel like, okay, maybe it's safe to be myself. But because I had never really embraced my authenticity, sometimes it was just like intense and extreme. And people weren't used to that. And so I felt like I knew it. I'm unlovable. I can't be myself because people don't like it. And so there was also kind of this development of self-hate that came along the way, that deep sense of I'm unlovable, there's something wrong with me, so I need to perform and do what people like so I can be included and be loved.
And how did you manage to break out of that? How did you, I guess, first of all, learn who your authentic self was, and then learn to move from self-hate, hopefully, to self-love? How did that? That's a big question. Sorry. How did you?
That's okay. I mean, it's a good question, and it's really a process. It's not something like I read this book and then boom, I love myself fully, found my authentic
People
self,
always
right?
people always want fast answers, don't they? They want to say, I saw this clip on YouTube, and after that, I was
Boom.
cured. I was healthy, happy, loved, loving, lovable. Yeah.
And sometimes I think these moments we say that because those are the ones that really woke us up to the
Yeah.
path, to the
Hmm.
journey. And I think for me, I've always was interested in these types of things like self-development, psychology. When I took a year in between math and pharmacy, I took a year of just taking general classes to keep myself full time as I was figuring out. And I took 2 psychology classes just because I was very interested. So it was always something that interested me in there.
Mm.
But I think at some point I moved to the US. And after I was a pharmacist, I worked for a year, moved to the US. But of course, my pharmacy license was not just approved across country. And
Okay.
I had to spend 2 years really to do more studies, pass exams, do internships to have my pharmacy license approved in the US. And during that time, there was a lot of self study. Like, there is no classes, it's you and the textbooks day in, day out. And my ADHD started to be flared up, and so I saw a doctor, got prescribed stimulant medication because that's what happens. That's what we prescribe for ADHD. But because I had anxiety, remember, and I had been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and you add a stimulant to that, like the anxiety started to flare up. And I remember having even like rashes on my neck and just being such a like nervous wreck with all these things. And so my doctor wanted to prescribe me again antidepressants, which are a low dose for anxiety. I had stopped years before because of side effects. And so it felt like now I knew, because I was a pharmacist, like when you prescribe medication for the side effect of another medication, then you find yourself in this medication cascade. And I was early 30s and I was like, there's no way I'm getting into this thing. I know there are non-pharmacological ways to go about anxiety and ADHD and all these things. So I brought the prescription to the pharmacy and I never picked it up. And not too long after that, I also worked at stopping my ADHD medication. Only do that with your doctor. But, and I think it was that moment that really pushed me into diving deep. So like I would spend hours on YouTube watching people talking about psychology, mindset, anxiety, all of these things, reading books. I started to meet spiritual teachers and mentors and travel overseas to get trained on coaching modalities, but were used initially for my own growth. Like I got certifications along the way, like neurolinguistic programming or NLP. I studied, I'm a shamanic practitioner. Eventually, I also became ordained as a yogic priestess and studied world religions and spiritual counseling. But all of these things were actually from the core of wanting to grow myself, wanting to understand myself, wanting to not have to rely on medication, because I know that those are just coping mechanisms that we're trying to put a band-aid on. And I wanted to go more at the core of it. And at some point, I realized more and more who I was. I started to undress the layers of the stuff I had picked up along the way. And I really believe that's what I call my method, the sacred undressing journey, because as we grow up, we start putting on these layers, limiting beliefs, who we think we should be, perspectives, I am, like the false identities, what were reflected, like even beliefs about the world and the black and white, the right and wrong. And so all of these shape who we are and shape like how we respond, our triggers from past wounds that aren't healed. So by undressing these layers, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but through these courses, through my research, through working with mentors and teachers, I was able to undress more and more. And the journey's not over, but I'm a lot closer to my true core than I was because I've been on this journey.
Wow, that's a hell of an answer. Um, it's really interesting, and I don't want to I don't want to take this conversation off piece, but we just had a report in the UK. It was released. It's the first time they've done a report comparing the side effects of different antidepressants.
Ah,
First time ever. So it's this antidepressant is shown to gain weight or sexual performance or blood pressure or heart, all the sort of things. And so I started taking antidepressants 30 years ago
mm-hmm.
and had been on them for 30 years nonstop.
Right.
And at the time I started taking them, the doctor was very much, well, we'll try this and we'll give it, if it works, if not, we'll try something else. And I think I ended up trying 12 different things, a couple of which are no longer allowed to be prescribed. But so 71 days ago now, I stopped taking them. After anybody listening, I would highly, highly recommend you do not just stop taking antidepressants. It is, well,
Absolutely.
I tried to do it a couple of years ago and I felt literally in the darkest place ever.
Yeah.
But tapering off for me, it was over sort of 4 months. It took to taper off eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying, oh my God, I feel incredible, but it's that sort of feeling. And I don't have an issue with the medical profession because most doctors in the UK, they get, I think it's 3 minutes per patient. So if they prescribe somebody antidepressants and that's sort of a tick, it's move on to the next one really. And they're never ever getting to the issues or the problems. So I do completely agree. And it's really empowering to hear you say that there are non-pharmaceutical alternatives out there. It's just, I guess in many ways, for many people, it's such a jungle in some ways. Lots of things are unregulated, and it's like, well, where do I start? What do I do? How do I
Yeah.
progress? So if somebody found you and they'd be fortunate to find you and sort of said, well, my life feels like I'm following this prescribed path that I don't want to be on, and I'm perhaps not all that I could be, or I'm just feeling, there's more. How do you start the conversation with somebody?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because that's really where it starts. Like, I'm feeling there's more. It's not that
Mhm.
my life is shit, excuse my
Yeah.
language. Like, but sometimes it is, but it's like, and that was it for me. Like my life's okay. Like, well, but I'm feeling like I'm called to more. Like there's
Mhm.
something, and also finding your time being reactive. Like you're cool in your house with your smoothie and your meditation, and then the moment you go out, you get a text, someone says something, and like, thank you for ruining my freaking day, right?
Yeah.
And so being this ping pong ball between ping pong paddles, like that's I felt for me at least, and for people who work with me, like it's no way to live. And so that kind of often is the starting point in like wanting something more than, and we can't know what it is. And really, the first step for me is to have that conversation with them. And my work is very personalized.
Mhm.
So I I do one-on-one coaching, and I have right now like also a free challenge, which is called Unmessable AF, because that's really the goal of this whole thing, right? It's like if I can be just unmessable, but not unmessable in this like this is me in your face, take it or leave it. That's more what I call the rebel energy. So we go from the good girl that I describe, people pleasing, and we snap into the rebel, and then we're lonely and we come back to the good girl, and then we get stuck in that trap. When we undress, we actually come to the unmessable AF, which as a metaphor is more like the naked with no weapons. So if you imagine like this woman naked walking a path, and there's people on both sides locked and loaded wearing layers and fur coats, and they're just throwing and shooting at her, but it passes through her because there's nothing to grab onto. A little bit like the calm in the storm. So that's the spirit, that's the energy of really the unmessable women. Not like, ain't gonna deal with me. No, that's actually a compensation. So really coming and who knows if we can get fully unmessable in this lifetime, but we're getting closer and closer to that. So in this challenge is completely self-paced. I kind of take you through getting started. So that could be a really good starting point. But ultimately, I like to speak to people, and the presenting issue that they have oftentimes is not actually what's under the hood and what's actually the issue. I'm starting to work with women who are network marketers or starting their business, and they all think it's a strategy issue. It's like, it's my messaging. If I just could find the right words. And I speak to them, and like in less than 10 minutes, like they're brought to tears, and we found the core issue, and they're like, oh my gosh, it has nothing to do with the messaging. Of course, learning strategy and messaging is valuable, is important, but it's maybe 20% of the equation. I was after pharmacy, before I started with Kind Awareness, I worked as a Tony Robbins coach for almost 2 years. And Tony Robbins would say that all the time. It's at least 80% psychology, minimum. Like, he's been generous, and only 20% strategy. So the unmessable AF women in business also needs to undress layers, because what's behind maybe the lack of success that they're perceived or not to the level they want is really not the strategy most of the time. And so we get to undress the layers and get them closer to being able to show up, being able to do the work, what's actually blocking them. That's what I like to find.
It's really interesting you say that. So I do think a lot of time people will often think, oh, I just need to improve my website or my content or my wording or my planning or my font or the colors I use. And yeah, and sometimes you just want to have the ability to be able to talk to them and say, but what is it you're actually trying to do? What are the things that you actually want to achieve? What would happiness look like? What does success feel like? All those, as opposed to, you get these business books and it's like strategy and tactics of a winning business and
Yeah.
winning in a male-dominated world, and it's all those things. Just
The secret script that makes you
absolutely,
million
people,
overnight.
100%. People want that. People want to find that that one book. That's the book that's going to take me in. And you see
And
it.
there might be some valuable things in there, but
Absolutely. And
that's not.
there's things that help you be more professional and help you do things more quickly. All those things, absolutely. But fundamentally, it has to be about the person and what makes them feel, really, I guess. And if you can't get
Yeah.
to that, then everything else is going to be a
It's a little bit like weight loss, if you think about it. Actually, I'm reminded, my mom, that was years ago, wanted to lose weight, and she said, I'm going to stop putting sugar in my coffee. And I'm like, well, mom, like, I don't think the sugar in your coffee is what's making you overweight right now. Like, I'm sorry to say. Like, if you're eating super clean, you're exercising, and maybe that's the last little, like, edge, but
yeah.
there's a whole lot more other things that we can look at. And most people know, eat healthy, exercise. Like, and there are some people who might not know how to eat healthy, and there's that level of strategy, but ultimately why they're not losing weight, and I'll speak for myself too, because I could lose a few, is the mindset, the psychology, the going to food to cope, and all of that. It's not knowing what to eat.
Yeah, definitely. It's fun, isn't it, when you see people have they'll have a big burger and fries, then they have a Diet Coke. It's something, unless it's taste. And I just, after stopping the medication, I just joined a gym. I thought, well, exercise is going to help, and it's
Yeah.
been about a month now. And I was at the gym today, and there were people there that were in the weight section, and a lot of people spend a lot of time doing like tiny movements, like wrist curls or little odd things. Well, just do some bench presses and some squats. That's all you need to do, really. Forget about all these, unless you're literally going for the 0.1% perfection.
Yeah.
Going for those big compound exercises, and in your world, going for those big compound changes that really shift the needle. That's where you should be. That's where you should be playing. It's scary though. Those are big things to change, really.
It's like, what's the 20% that gets you 80% of your result?
100%.
Yeah.
And do you? I must want to apologize before I ask this question, but do you still find that when some women come to you, they still have a belief, and it may well be very well founded, that they've got to almost play the male role in business, if such thing as feminine and male roles exist. But it's because you're still here. It's still quite misogynistic in many businesses I've been into, and quite male dominated, and women are thought of very differently, especially when they've had children, etc., or when they're going through menopause or different phases of their life. Do you still find that some women are trying to almost beat the men at their own game, as opposed to focusing on the wonderful attributes, elements that they have to offer?
That's a
I'm sure I
great
phrased
question.
that very well. Sorry.
No, that's a great question. And I think it's not like a conscious, like, let's beat the men at their own game.
Hmm.
It's more, my sense is that there is a lot of women out there nowadays have an overactive masculine. And I've had that. And I'm still, coming more and more to my feminine, but I used to be a lot more in my overactive masculine because we think that's how we need to be successful. We think that, okay, I need to do all the things and structure, and there's this kind of like toxic independence that comes in the rebel side of things. It's like, okay, well, you know what? Good girl didn't work, so I don't need anybody. I'll count on my own, and not relying, not being in, like, the feminine receives, right? The
Hmm.
feminine works more in community. And so,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit more of the chaos than the structure of the masculine and the doing versus the being. And so I think by default, a lot of women think that that's what they need to do to survive, to cope, to be successful. And as when we're bombarded by like the 5 steps to success and the perfect script and how to do this, and if you don't do that, you're not going to succeed. Like suddenly, like we can get stuck in these strategies and the structure. And now, okay, so I need to post, and now I need to post on all these platforms. So I need to have like this super tight schedule.
Hmm.
But the feminine doesn't thrive in that. And so they kind of bump against themselves and then just like resist the structure, but then feel bad and guilty about it. So it's a very easy trap to fall into. So I think the masculine, the overactive masculine for the feminine woman shows up that way, in the sense that it really depletes us and drains us because we're not in our natural energy. Not to say that, of course, if we think about yin yang, there's a dot in each side. So we do
Yeah.
have a masculine energy part of us,
Hmm.
and we can tap into that. That's why I call it more the overactive masculine. And so bringing a bit more of the feminine and in flow, and bringing faith and trust and having space. The feminine, I found, needs something expansive, not expensive, expansive, right? To have space to create, to have space to be with her thoughts. When I have days where I'm just do, at the end of the day, I don't feel great. I feel like I just need some space so I can be with my thoughts and maybe write or
Hmm.
meditate or read. Like, the creation needs that kind of space allowance. And so, yes, absolutely, in that sense.
Do you remember when you first looked in the mirror, metaphorically or otherwise, and felt
Mm.
enough or felt authentic? Was it a moment, or is it something you're still working on? When did you feel that
Mm.
I've been through all of this, I've pleased everybody, but now, I'm enough, and I am authentic, and I am
Yeah.
who I'm supposed to be?
I don't know if I've done that with a mirror, but I know it's metaphorical. I think for me, it's more in reflection. So
Hmm.
if I just think about, oh, how interesting how I reacted or responded to this situation and how it would have been so different before.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of in that contrast that I'm
Hmm.
noticing my growth. Um, Authenticity for me has come also from, because before in the good girl, there's a lot of performance and can be perfectionism and wanting to look good, right? Because if I look bad or I make a mistake, like, oh my gosh, what does it mean about me? And it's just so like this gut wrenching feeling of like, I might die. And of course, it's unconscious and irrational, but that's oftentimes how it feels. So for me, coming to my authenticity has been more like, being real and raw, how about how I feel, and not having a problem about being human and having emotions and being imperfect. And that's okay for me, and not trying to put on a mask. But I do catch myself still sometimes in some situations that maybe new, where I want things to go well and I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And so it's really building the self-awareness muscle of being the observer, like Eckhart Tolle talks about a lot of the observer, and many other people, but kind of developing that distance between so associated in something and seeing yourself, because in that space is choice. And we don't necessarily always have it in the moment, but there's always the possibility to reflect afterwards and then build a muscle of like, it's okay that I felt unconscious and reacted and was angry. I should know better. No. We can learn and do better next time. And I have no issue going back to the person and be like, you know what, I just, in not so many words, but I would say something like, I went unconscious, I take full responsibility, I do apologize, I hope this, and that, and just be in that conversation, which before would have felt horrible because, oh my gosh, how am I going to look like? What are they going to think? And it would be more like defending, well, I reacted that way because you said this, and that. I mean, the way, it's not what you said, is the way you said it, and you have to understand. And this kind of like this defensiveness that comes in because we can't bear being wrong.
Yeah.
But that just creates conflict because the other person is on the same one. Well, I mean, and then it just escalates. And we get stuck in the trap even more. I don't need anyone.
Mm. Earlier on you were saying that in a phase where you felt less about yourself, you use the word sort of self-hate. Do you find it easier now to accept the love of others? Are you open to receiving love from other people?
Yes. And I would say what all this undressing and inner work I've done, what it allowed me to do actually is to be able to receive love from people the way they're able to give it, which is a very important distinction because sometimes we feel like we have this image of how we would like to receive love, this sense like how love should look like. And when people are people and we all have our wounds and not everybody is on the path of doing the inner work. And that's okay, right? There was that phase of my life where I wanted to teach everybody and make sure they take self-responsibility for their stuff because I learned that and I just wanted people to do it too, so they leave me alone.
Mm.
But I moved more into compassion
Mhm.
and love for others for how they are, because if I want to be loved unconditionally, that means no conditions. That means imperfect. That means exactly as you are, with the anger, the frustration, and all the beautiful things too. Well, am I loving others unconditionally? Or am I just like, I'm going to take your love or be connected with you only if, but that's conditional.
Mm.
And so when I stopped having these types of expectation of others, it was a lot easier to accept love the way they were able to give it. And that's kind of part of I know we didn't discuss that, but on the sacred undressing journey, I have like 4 sacred gates, which are
Mhm.
archetypes. So we start with the queen, which is all about this internal, with the self-awareness, the self-responsibility, like I've talked about. I like to say self-responsibility is the new sexy, because it's really nice to be with someone who does that. And then we go to the warrioress, which is more like that self-expression. How do I have composure in the face of challenges? What is this expression of myself that we found within the queen? But what I'm talking now about, this unconditional love and conditional compassion and being able to receive, is the lover gate. Now it's more like ethereal, like then the groundedness. It's like, oh, how do I be in overflow instead of like having this barrier of like this transactional, well, if it's not going to work like this, then I'm sorry. Or like, if you do this, I'll do that, energetically. And so I think by being able to love others as they are, I was able to receive love from people the way they're able to give it.
But when you work with women and they go on their sacred journey and they find themselves, and sounds like completely the wrong thing to say, but when they reach a point of there is a point where they no doubt feel very different than they did when they start the journey. How does that, and I'm not saying it's good or bad, but how does that then impact their relationships with, if they have a relationship with their partner, if it's a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or whatever?
Yeah.
Because the woman in this case has been through the journey. She's undressed. She's learnt so much from you, and you've guided, and you've worked together, and she's really become something, I'm sure, quite different. Then the partner potentially hasn't been anything on the journey at all, and I'm the husband sitting at home. This woman, this wife, this lady I've been with for the last 25 years keeps coming in. Every time I see, she's a bit different. But I haven't changed. How? Because I guess as the woman that's been to see you and work with you and has developed so much in the time, doesn't necessarily want to accept life as it has been. Does that make sense? So how does a relationship
Yeah, no, I understand your question.
Survive, evolve, grow, whatever the right word is?
It really depends on where the other person in that relationship is. Because we can't control people. Like, we can evolve, and like and in so many ways, how we are transforms what we receive back from the world, right? So it's, as we transform, the world around us also transforms. Yep. And there are some people who don't want that. And so they also have their own free will. In my first marriage, when I came back from a training and I had undressed so many things, it was an intensive, like 3-week training in Portugal. And I really came transformed. He said to me, he fell in love back again. He re-fell in love anyway, even more with me. And so there is that possibility. Like, if you're thinking, oh, my wife is changing, but if she's becoming less blaming you because she's taking responsibility, she's doing the inner work, maybe she's more into her feminine, maybe she's loving you more for what you can bring. So it depends where she is in the journey as well. You're talking about someone that has done the whole thing. You might just be like, amazing. I love this. What pill have you been taking? What have you been eating? Like, I want some of that. And sometimes the person just starts transforming just because they are mirrored back that person. But there's some people who are very attached to their pain, very attached to the coping mechanism. If we just think about, that's coming to my mind, like people who are alcoholics, let's say, drink a lot. Let's say there's a group of men or women or whatever, just a group that just drink every night and they have fun. And then one person starts like, hey, becoming sober, and they're awakening to that, and like everything and the impact and stuff. Like, some of the people in the group might be like, yeah, like it's been on my mind. And then maybe they're curious, but there's some people are just like, you're no fun anymore. Stop being here, because it's like, I don't want to be mirrored back at me what you're bringing. I want to stay in my stuff. I want to stay in like how the world is horrible, or how drinking is cool, or how whatever, right? The pattern is for that person. So if someone grows around them, it's going to start creating a big discomfort for them. So either they're going to meet that, and because that's something that also speaks to them, or they're
Mm.
going to start rejecting that because they don't want to change. And so that's the dynamic, and it really depends on the person. And just like anything, when you grow, sometimes there are some people that are not willing to grow with you. And it's about accepting that and loving them for where they're at. And sometimes they might come around years later, or they might not. Um, but that's okay too. And coming to terms of that being okay is also part of the journey in some ways.
Mm. It's yeah. It's really interesting. We talked about antidepressants and now about alcohol. So I've been sober for 14 years,
Oh,
and
congratulations.
exactly as you say. Some people took my not drinking as an opportunity to look at themselves a little bit, which is good. Other people that then I've now lost contact with, very much felt that that the changes I was making in myself, almost in their mind, was me judging their behaviour.
Yeah.
Which is, and it's very hard when you do something to impact yourself, whether it's, I don't know, you become vegan, you stop drinking and stop taking drugs, you become a health addict or a fitness junkie or whatever. A
Yeah.
lot of people that you've been in their circle with before somehow feel that it's you're making a statement about their behavior and their lifestyle, when when you're just trying to fix yourself, really. And it's
That
not
happened to me when I
noble.
became vegan. There was actually so many people close to us that were just so angry, and I didn't understand why at that time. But that's exactly what you're saying. It's like, well, if you're doing that, I guess you think it's better than what I'm doing, so you're making me wrong.
I
Yeah.
didn't know you're vegan, are you?
Yeah. Yeah, for 10 years about now.
Same. I think
Oh,
maybe, yeah. I think, oh gosh, maybe yes, definitely 10 years, 10 or 11 years. It's yeah, and it's probably one of the more interesting ones. I think is when people well, first of all, people suddenly become experts on protein and
yeah.
and nutrients and
Oh,
how you can survive, and you can be terrible, and so and
yeah.
neither you or I are emaciated or wasting away, or
No.
it's and again people feel that
But because
yeah
it's different and people are not
yeah
educated in that way, like we've been told things all our whole life, you need to
yeah
drink your milk. And,
yeah
so you're
yeah
like, oh my gosh,
strong and
if you're going to
healthy, strong
stop.
bones and things, yeah,
As a
absolutely.
pharmacist, I learned like vegans are the extremes. They need so many vitamins. Like, as I was in pharmacy school, I was like, oh my gosh. And so realistically, everybody who took the course, they had like, oh my gosh, these freaking vegans, hippies. Like they're all, So it's in the cultural consciousness because that's what we've been told.
Mm,
But you and I have done the research, and I found like, oh, okay, there's other ways. But
yeah.
people don't know, and they worry, and they grab on this to also not feel wrong for themselves and justify their own choices, which
Mm,
it's a human thing to do.
mm. One of the ones that I got, and again, it's a complete aside, which I still find very almost amusing now, is when I first became vegan and told my sort of parents, and it was the middle of summer and we were sort of chatting away, whatever. And my mum's response, mum sadly died a couple of years ago. Mum's response was, "Well, but you'll have a proper Christmas dinner. You won't not eat turkey and trimmings and everything else." It was almost like there was this sort of punishment, those self-flagellation by being vegan, by not eating these things.
Yeah.
And then you have that, and then one of the things that I have a real back and forth over it. So in our supermarkets now, even 10 or 11 years ago, it was much, much harder to find
Yeah.
things than it is now. It's very easy now. And the supermarket near me, I was only yesterday, has a couple of sort of chiller cabinets that are full of very highly processed
Yeah.
meat substitutes.
Hmm.
And on one hand, I think, okay, well, that's potentially good if it helps wean people off eating meat five
Hmm.
days a week, whatever. And on the other hand, it's sort of saying, well, look, we know that this is never going to taste as good as your steak or your fish fingers or your salmon or whatever. But here's an alternative, and it's sort of yes. I think I'm against it in a way, in that
Mm.
it's not nobody's trying to say that in all cases there weren't wonderful foods that I still miss the taste of, but it's not because of that. And I think almost trying to make this sort of false version of a steak
Yeah.
or a fish, whatever, just seems to be a negative, really. Yeah.
I think we just all have to make our own minds about things. I think for me, these processed things for myself is as long as it's in moderation, I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Just like chips or,
Hmm.
like pastries. It's
Yeah.
like, well, if you have them at every meal, yeah, probably not great.
Mm.
Um, and personally, I've never really had an issue of like trying to mimic something because at the same time, it's like ultimately it's the fat and salt
Yeah.
content and sometimes the crispiness if you have the fake bacon. And I'm like, well, I like these tastes and I'm not eating this vegan bacon thinking, oh, I'm having bacon. So
Yeah.
for me, it's
Exactly.
just
Yeah.
about because I grew up with these tastes,
Hmm.
I kind of missed the crispy and
Yeah.
fatty salty thing. And so I'm happy that the option's there if I
Mm.
so want to indulge.
Hmm.
And so, but if that's not for you, that's okay too. And if you don't like that because you think people are just not really merging to a whole food plant-based diet and just still getting hung on to
Hmm.
the omnivore diet and then just not being healthy, I could see that perspective as well.
Mm. When you work with women, and actually for yourself, really, how do you go about making peace with disappointing other people when it's necessary?
Mm.
And disappointing is a very loaded word, I guess. When you aren't behaving in a way that that person may well have expected you to behave, or you're not
Yeah.
doing the thing they may well have expected you to do.
Yeah. Well, it's always difficult. No one likes that. No one likes people being unhappy with you or finding like, let's say they didn't have results or, they're making a story about maybe you not responding fast enough. We just don't know. For me, I turn within. So, I mean, it's both ways. Initially, I might react and be like, well, da da da. And then I'm like, wait, catching myself. I'm still human. So I have these moments. And so, twofold, I would definitely try and have a conversation with the person and like clarify things and really see if there's any resolution that can happen. Because sometimes it could just be a misunderstanding, a
Yeah.
reevaluation, and bringing that curiosity, like, well, how would the person would like, and is that what they would like of me or our relationship? Is that in alignment with me? Is that something that I'm more than happy to do, or would that just be like I just want to please you? So I need to evaluate that. But yeah, I'm growing too. I'm a human, so it's about being open to like I could make mistakes or I could learn things that doesn't work for people and maybe make a tweak that's super aligned with me and make it better for so many people. So there's kind of that part, and then there's the internal part of okay, what is this triggering within me? And using this situation and the emotion that it triggers as an opportunity to undress some layers and go deeper and like okay, there's definitely a wound that got reactivated. Where is that coming from? And doing the inner work to clear that more and more. Some deeper wounds and deeper layers, more intimate layers, sometimes take many rounds before they get fully cleared. And then, there's just more to it in different angles. So without having the expectation of like, that should have been gone. Why am I
Mm.
reactive? And so I think there's a lot of self-compassion plus an openness to understand the other. And in some cases, people don't want to have the conversation. They want to hang on to being upset at you and making you the bad guy because that serves them. And so seeing that is also being able to let go without
Mm.
being able to have a resolution.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's a lot of the inner work, really, because we can't control the outside as much as we want to, as much as it would be so lovely to make it
Yeah.
the way we want. The only thing we can do something about fully is our internal world. And that's what becoming unmissable AF starts to look like on this path.
That's a hard thing, isn't it? Because I think you can either withdraw more and more so that you are
Yeah.
living in an environment that you can control, which is very, very small, it's very enclosed, or like you say, you can sort of kick the doors and windows out and go the other way. And it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a big step to take. And I think what you've done, which is so interesting, is you've gone from that pure mathematics background. My son's studying next door for his maths
Oh
exam.
yeah.
This pure mathematics background to then pharmacy to then going on a, for want of a better words, a spiritual and
Yeah.
shamanic journey and learning things. You've gone through everything. So I just wonder, with your pharmacy background in particular, but then looking at what you've explored since, what are your thoughts on plant-based medicines? And most
Mm.
medicines are plant-based, but this because there's lots and lots of talk now about different forms of
Are you talking like
psychedelic or
ayahuasca,
or
microdosing?
mind expanding and mind
Yeah.
altering, just looking at our consciousness in a different way. I just wonder what your
Yeah.
thoughts were.
I haven't yet explored that, but it's been on my mind. I've been wanting to do ayahuasca for many years, but it hasn't aligned. So I'm just also trusting that it's probably not meant to be, at least right now,
Yeah.
because the opportunities just were never really aligning. So I can't really speak from personal direct experience,
Mhm.
but the concept of it, I think if it's done with it's all about the intentionality
Yeah.
of it. So if it's done with the, I don't like to say right, but the right intention
Mhm.
or a good intention that supports you, and it's done in a context where it's with someone that has the experience of leading these journeys and so forth, and for the goal of expansion and seeing what am I not seeing, because that's the beauty of having a coach and being in a group coaching environment, whether you're doing one-on-one or in group, is, and that's why I also have a coach and I'm also part of a mastermind, because I do what I preach. But we can't see our own blind spots, right? We can use the stuff that's happening that trigger us as a way to kind of shed light on certain aspects, but sometimes we stuck in stories. And once you know, you can unknow it, but you got to know it first.
Mm.
So I could see the benefit of someone that's on the journey and wants to, okay, I want to see more stuff. Like, what's actually happening in this unconscious of mine that I'm not seeing, that I could do something about for the purpose of unmessable as AF women, or my evolution or my spiritual growth.
Mm.
I don't see any issues with that, but I haven't thoroughly researched or don't have any uh, personal experience. I think for me, and that's just a personal preference, I don't like the idea of having to take something every day. So I know some
Yeah.
people, and I have clients who take CBD every day
Mhm.
or microdosing, and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
do really well with it. So really, it's a question of what works for you. My personal preference is not the right thing. There's no right and wrong. That's why I teach my client, and that's why I coach them on. It's like, I'm not going to tell you the right direction. You tell me what you want, and I'm behind you 100%. Like, I have women coming in, they're thinking about their marriage. Should they stay or should they go? I actually had this client to come from a different coach, and the other coach was telling her, divorce the guy already. I'm doing that with my guy. I almost fell off my chair when she
Oh my
said
goodness.
that. What? I'd never do that, because
No.
it's a world of duality. So what's right for me might actually be wrong for you, and vice versa. So just as my preference, I would use something like, let's say I need it, like an antibiotic, like you have
Yeah.
a bacteria, like, or you do
Mhm.
a journey. But I don't like the idea of creating this dependency on a day-to-day substance. That's just my
Yeah.
preference. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's really valuable, I think. And when I've talked to people that have they're in this space before, they say, well, I think one of the challenges now, if you think about something like ayahuasca, is that there's a big difference between taking ayahuasca in a strip mall in Toronto than there is in a ceremony in the middle of Peru with somebody that. And they said that the big thing is it's not almost the drug of choice is almost less relevant than the guiding you get
Yeah.
when you're there, because if you just take it without having some, as you say, some form of intention,
Hmm.
some form of understanding, some form of guidance to going into the journey, coming out of the journey, all of those things can do more harm than good. And yeah, and I do think, yeah, some of those things where you potentially do something once a year, once every couple of years, just
Yeah.
lets your mind, because we still have a really limited understanding of what consciousness even is, really.
Hmm.
What is consciousness? Is it the fact that you and I know we're here, know we're talking? Is that consciousness? What does it really look and feel like? Especially in light of how AI is developing and lots of things like that. And I
Yeah.
did want to ask you a little bit about AI, because one of the things that, it's a very wide range of conversations, but you've given some amazing answers. So I feel I can go anywhere with you. But one of the things that certainly in the UK and the US, and I haven't necessarily seen research from Canada, is we are, to some extent, maybe the loneliest society that we've been for since
Mm.
records began. So people that say they don't have a best friend, or people that might only talk to somebody once every 48 hours, they don't have closeness with somebody. We have this amazing ability to connect. You know, you're in Canada,
Yeah.
I'm in London, we're chatting away quite easily, so we're connected. It's wonderful. But people's ability to connect in person
Yeah.
has reduced over the course of the last few years for lots of reasons: social
Hmm.
media, smartphones, all those sort of devices. And I just wonder what your thoughts were on whether AI companions or AI chatbots or even AI therapists, heaven forbid, whether they have a role to play in a positive way, or
Yeah.
it's something we should be very wary of.
I think just like everything, there's no black and white.
Mm.
It's really about the intention. Like when TV came, right? If we just think
Mhm.
about television, a lot of people Netflix and chill. Like, how much of our lives have we wasted in front of that black box? Right? Well, now it's a screen. It's like a flat thing. It's not a box anymore. But um, so we could do that with every technology, and I think that's why a lot of, and I'm not an expert in AI, but that's why a lot of leaders probably sit with that question, like, is that something? um from my own personal opinion, these things could have a space, again, I think, in moderation. Like, if someone doesn't have a friend and then they, let's say, befriend an AI, and then, or one thing I'm afraid, I have an 8-year-old, almost 9-year-old son, and I don't want to get him like these like virtual
Yeah, yeah.
reality stuff. Maybe at some point I won't have a choice, but anyway, uh I'm just, since he was very young, I was very much like, look, this is real life. Like, you see the trees, because I could totally see even myself falling in that trap. Like, let's
Hmm.
say I'm overweight, I've lost my job, I don't have friends, and in this virtual reality, I can create the body I want, my
Absolutely.
avatar, and then I can like go on things like, and these types of games already existed, right? But when you have this virtual reality, it just becomes real.
Mm.
And we've seen these movies where just people, I can't remember, but that was a movie like that,
Mhm.
where people just all had these masks and they were
Yep.
just sitting like that and like they're
Mm.
wasting away. So I think that could be a real concern, right? But then it's like, if you're using it to, I don't know, maybe people can have meetings all over the
Mhm.
world. Who knows what we could do about it? But it's I think being clear on like asking these questions, like what's the consequence of that? Like, what's real life? What am I looking to create? And just doing the inner inquiry, really, of how this is impacting me. I think definitely there's probably a need for maybe some leaders to help, because if I'm just thinking kids, like my son is not going to be able to have that level of conversation with himself,
Yeah.
of reasoning. It's just like other kids are doing it. I just want to be in this world. And he would probably not be able to make any logical conclusion or intentionality
Mm.
about that until he's much older. But yeah, it's a big conversation. I think it's good to ask the question, but I think sometimes we just want to throw away the baby with the bathwater because it just feels safer, but then technology will evolve anyway, so it's probably smarter to be in the conversation, right? Not
Uh,
just like doing it all like the good girl, if we're just coming back to this model, just putting it away and like, no, it's like, can we stay in the middle and the discomfort of what that can bring and look at it through more clarity and objectiveness?
Yeah, 100%. It's very. I can't think of any instances where something's been invented and then we've forgotten about it, no matter how bad the invention is or how bad the technology is. But again, it's down to how we decide to use it.
Yes.
In 5 years' time, you could have, an amazing practice where you're talking to your clients on virtual reality. You're walking in the same space as they are. You're feeling the air on your skin. You're feeling the sun in your hair. All those things. You can feel all those things through virtual reality. So I think, the important thing is
But
it's a bit like when you get to the film stage where we no longer realize we're in virtual reality. So you and I could well be sitting in a chair
yeah, yeah, yeah.
somewhere. We're
That's a
not really
danger.
here, but we're wearing that. That's the thing. When you don't
Yeah.
realize what's real and
But I
what's
think it
virtual.
also created a need, a desire, I should say, more for um, real relationships because it creates a contrast.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like when you lose something, you're like, oh, I like that a lot more, right? So
Yeah.
I did initially when I started with kind of awareness, I thought I would just focus on people pleasing and then I expanded from there. But initially I thought, oh, I'm going to create this one course, self-paced, recorded, people do it. It has everything in it. Maybe we have meetings. And so I did interview with women because I wanted to know
Mhm.
what they would want, how would want the format. And what I got was a lot of people did not want pre-recorded. They wanted more accountability, live, like not necessarily in person, but live, like
Yeah.
feeling the energy of the person in
Yeah.
this call, which was interesting. Like I felt like before, it's like, for me at least, I'm busy. Like if I could just do something asynchronous, like not at the same time and do it on my own time while I'm doing the dishes and maybe I'm listening to that. But I feel like more and more like there's this desire of sisterhood. I mean, on the woman's side or
Mhm.
brotherhood,
Mm.
of people coming together and actually having human interaction. And so I think there probably is also that growing as well in response to the contrast.
Yeah. And it's more of a commitment. I think that when you have to commit to something, when we have to commit to meeting you at 9 a.m. every Wednesday, whatever,
Yeah.
it just feels more value as opposed to, yeah, I can get to that whenever. It's pre-recorded. I can just log in
Yeah.
and look at it whenever I want to when I'm doing the dishes or doing something else. But when you actually having to invest your time, because time is the most valuable resource we have, I guess. When you're investing your time in something, it just feels much more valuable. Um,
Excuse me.
Two more questions before I let you go. You've been very
Yes.
generous with your time. The first of all, the first one must be when you meet with your clients, especially when you have those first few discussions with them. I'm sure you come across some upsetting or traumatic or difficult stories, and you're
Mhm.
part of that, and you want to be there for the person. You want to be able to absorb that and to listen. I just wondered, how do you look after and nourish your own mental well-being? How do you avoid getting stuck in the negativity that you might feel when you talk to people?
Hmm. So that's a good question. There is a coaching state that I have developed. So when I'm in coaching mode, excuse me. Oh, when I'm in coaching mode, I'm not in friend connection mode.
Mhm.
So when I'm with my friends, it's like, oh yeah, and then we're talking about it. And it's not that I don't have compassion. I always have compassion and love for the person. But there's just a little bit more of like, my job is to observe. My job is to make sure that I help find patterns, that I go to the core. So I'm almost like, I mean, it's a bit exaggeration, but if you imagine a scientist going to a new planet, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, that's interesting. This is there, this is there, this is there, right? So it's a mix of that plus um, a heartfelt connection, right? Because it's not just purely scientific.
Mm.
But because of that, it's going to be difficult for me to get sucked into something if I find myself, because there's some clients that I've had for a long time. And so I had to catch myself sometimes being a bit more on the friend zone
Yeah.
and being like, wait, hold on, because I know this is not valuable for them.
Mhm.
This is not why they pay me. This is not why they're there. And as much as they appreciate that, I want to make sure that I do my job and I serve them with what they need.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's also, it's not black and white. If I remember one time I had a really big event happening with my dad, and I came on a coaching call with my coach. And she spent the whole session just listening to me, sobbing and talking about it, and her asking me questions. She did not, quote unquote, coach me in that session.
Mhm.
And then she framed that at the end, like, I think today that's what was needed.
Yeah.
And she felt that. And so it's about also intuitively knowing when there might be times where it's like, this person needs to be heard, needs to have a space to be held in love, which doesn't happen like every other week, right?
Mm.
But there's going to be these moments, and it could be part of the session, and then then we move on. So there's a lot of that intuition of like, what does this person need right now, and how can I support them at the highest level while keeping my role of a coach clear.
And then finally, and I think it might be quite hard to answer, but your journey so far has been anything but predictable. So do you have a view as to what you think the next 5 years might look like?
What would the next 5 year look like? I'm not sure. What I see is that I would like to serve more women and just really expand this movement of unmessable as fuck. Sorry, unmessable AF. You
No,
can
right.
cut that.
No, keep it in, definitely.
And really women stepping more, because I want to end the self-suffering, or the self-imposed suffering, and create real global and generational change, because I can see how me changing course from, like, let's say, how I was and the layers I took on, if I would just have continued that road, versus like me kind of like doing the work and undressing and coming here, and the things that I could have kept perpetuating, and how it would have impacted my son, my husband, my family, my friends, my world, what I do, my happiness. So really working with one woman on undressing and coming home to herself, and more fulfillment and joy and love, and also like growing her business from the inside out. Like, it doesn't just affect her, it affects the world
Absolutely.
around her. It has this ripple effect. So realistically, at the mission level, for me, I see this as creating global and generational change. So for the next 5 years, that's what I'm working on, is to expand my visibility and my reach, and be able to touch more women who feel aligned with my method, because I'm not the only one working. We're all like different ways, but the way I say things, the way I created my system will speak to, there's women out there waiting for that. And it's my job, I believe, to do what I can so they see it. And they come into the space and start doing the work too. So in the next 5 years, I see just what I'm doing becoming clearer, more impactful, and just more global too.
So would you get to? I know that was the last question, but that was a lie. Would you at some stage license others to do what you're doing? Because ultimately, although you're an amazing person, you are one person, and scalability, you can't. There's only 24 hours in the day, and you haven't found a way to make more time. So I guess a way to do it is to franchise or license or roll out, or almost teach the teacher, and then have a range of people that can then do this globally. Is that a thought?
It's not currently planted in my consciousness, I would say. I think for me to be able to scale, I like the idea of group as well, like creating sisterhood, because I think we're also more powerful together, and there's that need. So that, and of course, self-paced courses always have a place, and continuing to do that. Maybe at some point, if I see that there are people, I think for me, it would be once I see that there's women in my world that are rising up to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Like, they want to do what I want to do. They're very there. They're very involved. I wouldn't just like create this, like, come get this coaching certification and all the key in the book. So I wouldn't necessarily do that, because it's very much a deep journey. And I think right now I'm still refining my system, refining my method. And I just know that if that's meant to be, at some point, there's going to be these women who start to rise, obviously, from the rest. And then I would have the conversation. And I see that more happening organically. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. You've been super
Welcome.
generous. Some really interesting answers. I can't wait to listen back to what you had to say. And it's nice to meet another vegan.
Yeah,
And
there you
people
go.
get to talk to. It's good. Something brought us together. So I like that. But no, thank you. And just keep doing what you're doing. I'm really interested to follow your journey over the next few years.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and everybody watching.